I'm Andrew. I'm an alcoholic. Now, I'm actually really nervous about this. I don't mind speaking in front of people at all, but I've lived my whole life, for me, most of it, but I have never taken an hour to talk about myself, so it's going to be kind of difficult. But man, we'll start with what it was like for me before, and just kind of how I grew up. I didn't have a bad upbringing at all. I actually had a really good family. Born, and my mom spent a lot of time with me as a kid and really helped me to learn. And I turned out to be pretty smart, believe it or not. And I remember, I guess, the first thing that really defined kind of, I guess, how I felt about myself and what my path would be like, looking back on it. As a kid in kindergarten and in first grade and all through elementary, I won a lot of awards, right? I was pretty sharp, not bragging on myself, but I guess I did good through school. And I just didn't really, I fit in and had friends, but the thing that happened a lot with that, and being an only child, a lot of people made fun of me, right? And I remember the thing that stuck with me the most when I was a kid was people would call me gay. And I'm not gay, and at that time in my life, man, that was a big thing for me. I didn't understand it. I know a lot of really good gay people now that I'm really close with, but at that time in my life, that was a huge knock for me. And that just kind of set me on a path where I was going to be, just kind of always self-conscious about myself. And as far as alcohol in my early life, it was really, really common in my family. My mom and dad both drink. My grandpa was a recovering alcoholic. My mom actually just gave me a 24 hours a day book that was his the other day. His sobriety date was a year and 7 days before I was born. But I always heard stories. I mean, he kind of told me about his past. He was in recovery in AA himself, and it was just really common. My grandmother drank on my dad's side. Dad drank every night, still does. And I just grew up around it, and it was never taboo or anything. And a lot of things happened when I was a kid that I saw that just kind of, if I look back on it, maybe would have kept me away from alcohol. Mom and dad was never abusive or anything, but alcohol really caused a lot of trouble for me. And there was a lot of really hateful words sent across the house, never towards me, but I always witnessed this back and forth between mom and dad, and that kind of played a toll on me, and we'll get back to that later. But two of the things that are most prevalent that I remember from my childhood that involved alcohol was watching my dad. He physically kind of assaulted his own mother on the front porch of our home because they were both drunk. And then there were some other things. I watched him and his brother get into it. And there were a lot of other things that I really just don't want to share, but pretty significant impact. And then, for the most part of that, all through middle school and everything, it's kind of, that was kind of, of no event. But a big turning point came in my life when I was, 12 to 14, 15 years old. I got involved in a group of friends, and I got really involved in church and church life. And man, things were just good. I had a great group of friends. I had a lot of people I could really rely on. Felt really comfortable in my own skin around these people. May not look like it today, but I was into the, what was it, emo or whatever? Yeah, I had real long hair, straightened it, real skinny jeans and all that. But I was comfortable around these people, and that was really good. But I do remember at 13 years old, I hung out with a person or a friend of mine that I didn't really hang out with a lot. We went with his family to Branson. And I work with his older brother now, and he probably don't remember it, but his older brother bought us a 6-pack of Bud Light and left it in the hotel room for us while everybody went and did their thing. And we drank 3 of those beers apiece, and I mean, we're young, so we got pretty drunk. And it was so fun, because we went down, there was this arcade on the main drag there in Branson. We walked down to this arcade, and we're drunk in this arcade. And man, that was awesome. And I didn't really think, I thought this is a lot of fun. But I never really went back to drinking after that. I can count on one hand the times I drank through high school. It just wasn't my thing. I tried some other stuff, right? I mean, I worked at a grocery store, and the keyboard cleaner or whatever, we would do that, But never really got involved in a lot of activity like that. So where my story really begins for me is when I went to college. So again, all through school, right, real smart, applied myself real well. So I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to go to the University of Arkansas. And looking back on it, I wouldn't change anything now, but I've had a lot of regrets, and I wish I'd have went somewhere closer, because I got so far away from anybody who had any oversight on me that I just completely just let loose. And I remember going down there in the summer with my mom and dad, and like I said, I never drank, and I wanted to fit in, right, because how my whole life had gone through when I was younger, and I didn't have any friends, so I was going to join a fraternity. I knew that's what I was going to do. So you go down there in the summer, and there's all these rush parties and everything. So I remember we were there for a couple of days, and the 2 nights that I was there, mom and dad wanted me to be there. I'm still a kid. Wanted me to be back to the room by like 11 or something. Well, I rolled in at like 4 or 5 both mornings, and just absolutely hammered. And went back to school, or went back home for the rest of the summer, didn't really drink or anything. It was just those small things. But the very, very first night that I moved to Fayetteville was the first time I ever smoked pot, and it was probably the drunkest I've ever been. And from that night forward, up until I was about almost 20 years old, I smoked pot every day and drank every day, and I drank every day for several years. I didn't drink a lot, but every single day I drank. But while I was in Fayetteville, I joined a fraternity, and got a fraternity brother in the room. But I joined a fraternity, and I tried to fit in there, and I guess I did. I had some pretty good friends there, but I still never felt like everybody else. But I drank and did what everybody else did to kind of try to feel like I had some friends. And I did that a lot. I had a girlfriend while I was in college too. And the first thing that really ever happened to me that probably should have told me that, hey, maybe you should look at not doing this. We got into an argument, and we were driving. We were drunk. I was driving through Fayetteville, and she wanted to get out of the car. And me being drunk and not in my right mind, I didn't let her. Right? It was kind of like this thing. Well, I ended up getting, the cops were coming to arrest me for what, kidnapping or something like that. Right? So I left that night drunk and drove all the way back home. And man, I went and told my parents about this, and there was absolutely no conversation about it. It was just like, that's okay. Things happen like this when you're drinking, and that's kind of where it's normal for me. Like these normal things, just over and over again. And there's a lot of events like that I'll try to cover. But that was the first real, I guess, incident that I had with drinking. Step back a little bit. One of the things when I came in here that I talked about, that was part of the biggest problem for me when drinking is, I'm not myself. I had a totally different personality, but never really felt like I fit in, and I was called gay so much when I was younger that I kind of had a point to prove, and my point to prove there came through Jason Lemon, and to a really unhealthy point. I was just looking for some kind of confirmation from somebody, and I had a relationship when I was younger that I thought was going to be very, very serious, and that person ended up leaving me for somebody else and having kids real young and everything, and that kind of set on me. But from that point forward, I don't think I've ever had a relationship, even with my wife until now, where I've been completely faithful, and alcohol has really played a part in that. But another big turning point, so after the kidnapping thing, Mom and Dad came to Fayetteville about every month to visit. I'm an only child, so they really wanted to see me. So they would come up and they would stay at a hotel in Rogers, and me and this girl would go, we would stay in the room with them and just kind of spend some time with them. And I really, really clearly remember this because Mom and Dad were there and we were all drinking. They would make a point to stay at the Embassy Suites because the drinks were free. So we would just sit at the bar and drink. And mom and dad were kind of doing their thing, and they weren't getting along real well. There were some words being said. And at this point, I'm a grown man. That's how I feel. And that's the first time me and my dad ever got into a serious altercation. And man, it was bad. And I remember how I felt about that for several days thereafter. Is I would have never done that if I hadn't been drinking. And that's when I knew that, hey, this has some kind of control over me that's making me act different. But it still didn't change the way I acted. And that was the first of several times that happened while I was in college. Even when I would come home for the summer, things like that, Dad and Mom would have their conversations, and I would get involved and do that. But the worst thing that ever happened with me and my dad, and this is something that I don't share with just everybody, and it still really sets on me and kind of shows how bad it changes my personality. Me and Dad were in an argument, and you'll probably never meet my dad, but if you ever do, he's missing a piece of his ear because I bit it off. And I mean, I don't like, I normally don't talk about these things, but it changes the way I am, man. I mean, my whole attitude and personality changes to be somebody completely different. And if you ever talk to any of my friends or my wife or anybody, it was so bad that, I had an alter ego. It'd be, hey, that's Gary, that's not Andrew, right? I mean, and so college, going through all that, college didn't really work out for me. Not because it wasn't for me, it's because at that time I wasn't for college. I didn't apply myself, didn't go to class because I was drunk or I was drinking during the day, or I was, smoking pot, whatever that was. And I lost my scholarship very first year. And after that, I took out some student loans for a semester, and I thought if I'm paying for this, then I will take it a lot more seriously, and I'll really buckle down and do the right thing. And I mean, midterm grades came out, and I'm still absolutely taking it. This is about January of 2009. So just like everything else, I didn't really want to face those consequences. So I remember I was living in the fraternity house with a really, really good friend of mine still. We still talk. And I woke up one morning and I told him, I said, hey man, I said, I'm going to move out. And he goes, okay. He said, well, after summer or something? He goes, where are you going to stay? I said, no. So we're going to put all my stuff in my truck today, and I'm going home, right? So I'm still dating this girl. I still got all my friends. I didn't tell anybody. I just left Fayetteville and I came home. And I never looked back. And I didn't want to face it. Grades, completely failed classes. I'm going back to school now, and that still haunts me. That's really bringing my GPA down, but we'll get past that. So I moved home, and I went to live with my mom and dad again, and I did that for probably a month or so, and I was still acting like I was in college. I was out drinking every night. I didn't have a job, and it got to a point where my mom and dad sat me down and told me that I had to move out because I was keeping them up and worrying them too much. And I didn't have anywhere to go. My grandparents owned a single wide trailer and told me that I could stay there for $100 a month, and I thought, man, that's a steal. So I went to live in this trailer, and I lived there, and I worked at a restaurant for a little while, and I kept doing the exact same things that I was doing. And the first time that I ever really felt like I had a problem with drinking, like a true problem with drinking, was after just this long run. I would work at the restaurant, take all the money that I made every night and give it to the guy to go buy some beer because I was still too young to buy beer. And he would go buy some beer, and I would bring that home, and I would supply the beer for me and two other guys, and then they would bring, drugs or whatever. And we would just sit there, and every night that's what we did, all the time. And we did this, man, it was probably like 3 or 4 weeks straight. And one day I woke up and I had this complete and total emptiness. And I had no emotion, no nothing, and I just felt so ashamed, really. And I called my granddad because he was active in AA and asked him if I could go to the meeting. And I went, and I remember sitting in the room, and it came time for me to introduce myself, and I said I was an alcoholic, and I just couldn't say anything else, and I just wasn't ready for it, and I didn't feel like I wanted to be there. I didn't feel like I had anything in common with any of these people because I didn't experience the same lows that they did. And so I just went back to doing what I was doing. I mean, that night I was drinking again. It was just whatever, do the same thing. And I did that for years. At 21, I just turned 21, and let me go back. So at 20, I ended up I quit smoking, and that's what's so different for me. Like I said one day I was going to quit smoking, and I quit, but I never could do the same thing with drinking. And I quit smoking because I realized, hey, I'm not going to go to school. I'm not going to have an education. I need to figure out how to get a job next month. And got a job there in town. And then I ended up getting the opportunity to work where I still work at today. And man, it's been a huge blessing on my life, and I'm really lucky as we talk through this to still have the job. But I got a good job making good money at a really, really young age. And I've spent it all partying, going to bars, coming to Jonesboro, going, all over the place out of town. And when I was 21, I was in Jonesboro one night, and I was at a bar. I'd come over to meet some friends that I wasn't really close with, and I wasn't really feeling like I was fitting in, so I went upstairs to smoke a cigarette. And ended up kind of getting into a little tiff with some guys, no fight or anything, but decided, hey, it'd be best for me to just leave and go home because I'm here by myself. And I drove home completely obliterated and passed out somewhere around Lake City. What's the little town right before Lake City? But passed out there, crossed all the lanes of traffic, took out one of the signs there, run off in a ditch, flipped my truck like 3 or 4 times. Actually, it threw me out into a field. And my state of mind at the time was not like, man, this is awful. It was, I need to get home. So I walked up to the highway and hitched a ride with somebody to get back to Manila. And just left everything there. And, again, just not going to deal with it. And next morning, the state police came knocking. I was at my parents' house. That's where I went because there was never any repercussion. It was just like, man, this kind of stuff happens. And state trooper knocks on the door, and he tells me he can't give me a DUI because he can't prove that I was drunk, but he knows that I was. So I ended up it was reckless driving and leaving the scene, which if you're ever wondering when that goes on your record, my insurance was more than my truck payment on a brand new truck every month. So I did that for about 5 years and paid that. But I didn't take any responsibility for it. I mean, I went back to work, and it was just kind of like a thing. Like I told him, I flipped my truck and got thrown out. And I was so aghast that these people were like, wow, and like just kind of judging me for it. And I don't understand. This is normal. Because I'd done so many things like that throughout my life that nobody had ever really gave me a kick in the ass for, that I was like, this is just how things work. Ended up getting into a pretty serious relationship. And man, the drinking really was a problem with it. I was really paranoid all the time. I was kind of I had a lot of self-esteem issues in a relationship. A nice girl, and just a lot of insecurity and trust issues there. And that went really south. And through that going south, drinking, saying things, calls and everything else like that, I ended up getting myself a restraining order for 10 years. It was pretty rough. So I got involved in all that. I had all that go on. And I knew it was coming because they told me, they were kind enough to tell me, the girl and her parents and all that. And got served papers at work, right? Had to go out to the gate to get these papers served. And once again, I had an opportunity to go to court, and I said, if I avoid it, it'll go away. I just never showed up. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, it happens. So that lingered over me. Hell, that was until about a couple years ago, honestly. So dealt with that. But I still, all this was happening, right? And I shared all these things so openly with the people I worked with because I was just living a normal person's life. I was a young guy living life. And I never could understand why I would get looked over for promotions, or people would kind of judge me and tell me that, I need to straighten up and get my act together. And my maturity level finally started to pick up, and I realized that, hey, if I'm not going to act right, I'll just tell people I'm acting right. And so I just stopped talking about these things at work so much. And I went through several more failed relationships, and then I met my wife, and I know my wife, we went to college together, but took my wife on a date or whatever, and we got together in 2015. And that's where, really the bulk of things have happened for me to help me understand that I needed to be here. But met my wife in 2015, and she's a recovering addict. So we had a lot in common. I just didn't know it. And man, it was not a great start. My wife is a saint. I would have left me a long time ago, but not a great start. So created a lot of issues with my drinking with her and her family, and with me and my wife. And when we were just two people together and we didn't have kids or anything, it wasn't really an issue in my mind, I don't guess. But never was really faithful to her in the beginning, and she knew that. And again, she's a better person than I could ever be. But some of the things that I really clearly remember with that is, I've left her on Spring River by herself before. Man, I've left her in bars. I've done all kinds of things, and I look back on that, and I can't believe that the person I am today, that I would have ever done that, and I could never do that ever again. So somehow she decided to stay with me, and we decided we'd get married. And so just another example of how things are so normal for me that may not be for everybody else. We went to Nashville to get engaged, and we spent the night out on Broadway. And I had this huge plan laid out. I hired a photographer. I knew exactly the spot we were going to get engaged. And we both got pretty drunk, and I got kind of rowdy, and we got into it. And somebody ended up calling the cops on us, and we spent the night in jail the night before we got engaged. But just for note, even if the woman doesn't say it, if anybody says it's domestic violence in Tennessee, you don't really have a choice. And if my wife had decided that she wanted to say something, I would have spent a lot more time in jail. But we got out of jail, and for my wife, even being an addict, right, she saw that this is crazy. She said, we have to go home. We just spent the night in jail. And I was like, it's not a big deal, we're out now. Like, it's, I don't understand, I've got plans, we're doing this stuff today. And man, believe it or not, she still said yes. And so we got married, and our wedding, I did the same shit, right? I got drunk, made a scene, we fought. On our honeymoon, man, I don't think I could bring myself to ever repeat what I said, but my wife was going to leave the Dominican Republic to come home by herself. And I still didn't get it, man. I still didn't understand what the problem was. And the way I would do it, I would do these things, and I would say I was drunk, and just try to talk my way out of it. And it worked my whole life. And here I was seeing that I was doing this to somebody I cared about, and I still thought, man, it's okay because that's not me. And it got to a point, especially when we had kids. Before we had kids, we helped raise one of our nieces. She was at our house pretty much every day for, I don't know, 90% of a week, every week. And it wasn't the fact that I didn't want her at our house. It was the fact that when she was at our house, I couldn't drink. I couldn't be drinking all the time. And I wanted to go out to bars. I loved bar hopping. I didn't really like to sit at my house and drink, but couldn't do that. And that really started to drive a wedge into my relationship with my wife. And we really grew distant. And when we grew distant like that, I kind of reverted back to my old ways. I would get drunk, and Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that's the worst thing I think ever invented. I had it, but I don't really do much with it anymore. But I would seek this approval and confirmation from anybody that would give it to me. And I would hide it, and when I would wake up the next morning and I'd be sober, I'd delete it, didn't care about it, thought, man, I shouldn't be doing that, and go on about my day. When I was sober, I wasn't looking for it, but she finally caught on to that. And she threatened to leave several times. Somehow, in some way, we had a kid, because that's going to make everything better, right? So we got pregnant, and we had our first little girl, and I still kept drinking. And I didn't slow down any. I would just do it outside. I wouldn't drink around the kids or anything. or I'd put it in a cup, right, so I didn't see me drinking beer. But when I really started I knew I had an issue, right? I'd seen that earlier on in my life, but I didn't think it was a problem. When I started to realize it was a problem, and this is embarrassing, man, but I got to the point where I was getting so drunk that I'd piss the bed every time I drank. And with my little girl growing up, they still sleep in the bed with us, which, man, don't ever start that. But it got to the point where my little girl could talk. When I would wake up and I didn't pee in the bed because I wasn't drinking, she would congratulate me and tell me she was proud of me, you know. I mean, it's embarrassing, it really is, but I mean, that's how bad it was for me, and it was so normal that I would just wake up and strip the bed, wash the sheets, and go on about my day and put them back, you know. But I think the worst thing that my little girl ever saw, or in my mind, was I'd been drinking whiskey, which I didn't do a lot, and I'd been drinking whiskey. And I came in and I was so drunk I could barely stand up, and I knew that if I laid in the bed, my wife had been bitching about having to wash the sheets so much, and I knew if I laid in the bed that we'd have to do all that, so I went and just passed out in the bathtub. And my little girl came in there and kind of pulled the curtain back and saw me laying there, and she said, "Dad, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. You know, I'm going to sleep here tonight." And she couldn't understand why. And when I woke up the next day, man, I felt about that tall, right? Because, man, my kids shouldn't have to see that. But that continued on, and I kept drinking. And I told my wife, you know, I was like, "Hey, I'll slow down and I'll stop drinking so much." So I quit buying the 30 packs and everything, and I would just drink a beer on the way home from work. And then that turned into I'll get, you know, 2 double deuces, or I'll get a 6-pack or a 12-pack or whatever, and I would just try to drink it all before I got home. And then I would try to act sober when I walked in, and I mean, it was obvious that I wasn't, but that kept on, and then we kind of went back to the same place again. So I said, okay, I'll quit drinking beer like that. I really like the taste of beer. I'll do craft beer or something like that. And I started doing that. I would drink a beer, and then those beers were like 12, 14% alcohol. I mean, they'll whoop you. So I'd start drinking 6 or 8 of those, and I never could get a handle on it. So this was, it was sometime in January last year, and my wife was outside. We used to smoke cigarettes, so she was outside smoking a cigarette, and I go out there and I'm drunk and I'm smoking a cigarette with her. And she asked me, she said, "Is it always going to be like this, or do I need to just get used to this kind of lifestyle?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "Well, the infidelity, the being drunk, you know, the way you talk to me and this and that." And I said, "Well, I don't guess I understand what you're asking." And then, you know, she proceeded to just remind me of all these things that I'd done and the things that I was currently doing, you know, messaging people again. And I told her, I said, I'll figure out a way to get some help. And that wasn't quitting drinking, by the way. That was, I figured I'd get a therapist. So I started talking to a therapist, and man, I guess that was okay. It was a waste of $350, but it was I didn't want to go see a person. I didn't have time for that, right? I had to work, so I did the BetterHelp thing, like where you just text them, and that was really convenient. So I told this guy what was going on, and I'm sure he was a great therapist, but this guy wasn't. And I told him, I was like, "I need to stop drinking." He goes, "Yep, sounds like a plan." So I was going to stop drinking. Well, the very next day, I was like, "Look, I don't want to stop drinking. I want to drink. I just need to learn how to control it." So tried that again, and that's where the craft beer thing came in. But did that, and then I remember the night before I came in here. Actually, it was a Saturday night before I came here. I came in here on Monday. Again, my wife was outside, and I go outside, and she told me, she said, "We're going to leave tomorrow." And well, where are you going to go? You know, like, where are y'all going? And she said, "Well, me and the girls are going to go live somewhere else." And you know, I was like, "Why?" And again, proceeded to show me all the shit that I was doing. And she was dead serious. She said, "I've been looking for divorce lawyers and everything else." She said, "I don't want to leave you, but I have to." And man, that was pretty tough to hear, right? I love my kids to death. I wasn't a great father when I was drinking, but I still loved them to death. And I wasn't worried that she was leaving me. I was worried about how it would make me look. And it was the same thing when she was going to leave all the times before. When we were engaged and she was going to leave, I wasn't worried that she was leaving me. I was worried that people would see that I failed in engagement. And when she was going to leave our honeymoon, man, I ruined a marriage in a day. And so it was a really, really selfish reason that I decided to come in here. And I came in here, and I'll be honest with you, at first, I didn't feel like I was an alcoholic like everybody else in here, because, man, my story to me is just so much different. And somebody told me before that I haven't hit that bottom yet, and that stuck with me. I never lost a job. I've never been homeless or anything, but for me, my bottom wasn't the going to jail or the losing the scholarship or the almost killing myself in a wreck. It was, losing my family. But still came in here for selfish reasons, because I didn't want people to see me as a failure. And I came in here, and man, I was greeted with open arms, and everybody in here just listened to me. As Roy said, I just kind of opened up and spilled the beans. But I started to take it really serious, and got Jacob as my sponsor. I still remember just texting him and saying, "Hey, you're the ball guy, right?" Because that's all I knew in the house. I didn't know who he was. But I started taking it really serious, and man, I felt really good. But man, my relationship with my wife was still really rocky. She was still considering leaving me for a long time, and it has taken every bit of a year to regain. I think she trusts me. I really do. But I wouldn't blame her if she did. But I came in, and I've kind of been jumping around, but I was religious at an early age in life. But I got to a point where I wasn't. When I quit hanging out with the friends that I went to church with and everything, I kind of just put religion to the side, and I started to really question everything. And I didn't really cover it, but I intended to kill myself a couple times, but I never really tried that hard, I guess. Right? I wanted to die, but never really tried that hard. And I started to believe that there couldn't be a God or anything. And so when I came in, I wasn't religious or spiritual. Didn't really have a belief. Didn't really think about it or care about it. And but it didn't really scare me away hearing about a higher power, because I'd had that relationship earlier in my life with my higher power being God. But came in, started the steps, started really praying on things, and really putting the effort in. When I first came in, I tried to be here every single day, and I don't do that now just because I try to spend time with my family too, because that's what I almost lost. But just kind of what it's like now for me, and me and my wife have a great relationship. We're friends. I haven't said a crossword to her or called her a name or made her feel bad about herself that I'm aware of, at least in a year. And I don't think I've ever gone a year without saying something bad to anybody in my life. So just the fact that I can make her feel like she is important and like she's cared about, and just see her confidence level coming up, has been one of the best things that I've seen out of this program, and me just trying to be a better person. The relationship that I've got with my kids, I was there, but I wasn't present. And man, got one playing t-ball, got one that she's kind of feral, but I'm just right there. I'm right there with them with what they want to do. One of our favorite things to do is we wrestle. Right, I loved wrestling as a kid, so we wrestle. But just being there and seeing how excited those kids are for me, and just knowing that, my little girl doesn't have to ask me if I'm going to pee the bed, and that seems like a small thing, but that's a big thing to me. The relationship that I've got with my parents. So my dad and I had a really, really strained relationship for a lot of years for obvious reasons. but we're really close now. And my mom, I still don't think they would ever hold me accountable for any of the things I've ever done, or accountable for any of those things. But I just it's a lot of peace knowing that I can be around them and not have to worry about how I'm going to act or what I'm going to do, or having to call them to say, hey, I'm in jail, or this or that or the other. I found myself in the past year having a lot more success in my job. Right, I've got a pretty good promotion. I'm at a different division. Things are going well. Even with the responsibility, my stress level is so much lower, because I would get drunk and I would do something that I knew nobody else would ever know. And when I would go into work on Monday, I would be so afraid of being fired because somebody's going to find out what I did over the weekend. And I mean, they would have fired me if they had known that I was representing that way. But luckily that never happened. I've got a lot of spiritual peace now. I have a higher power that I talk to. I'm not going to say that I'm deeply religious. I go to church, but I have a higher power that works for me, that understands me, that's not gonna damn me to hell for making a mistake. And man, it brings me a lot of comfort. I don't worry about money. I don't worry about the things I used to worry about. I mean, I care about my finances and things, but I used to get so bent out of shape over the smallest things, over money, over just all this. And I'm kind of at ease now. I've gained a lot of friendships out of this program. Some really, really close friendships that I don't think I've ever had a person in my life that I felt that close to. And I had a group of friends that I was friends with from about 10 to 30. And we did everything together. And these people, I feel like I know better in this room than I've known anybody outside of these rooms. My whole attitude and outlook on life has changed. I've said before, getting called gay when I was younger was this huge knock. And man, I think I know some pretty beautiful gay people. So the memories that I'm able to build with my family now, because when I go places, I'm not just drunk and waking up hungover. I mean, we go to the beach, we can do things exciting. From the wrestling, the small stuff, right? I remember, and that's awesome to me. I've never sat down. I'll put it this way: when I was putting this together today, it's so hard for me to look back and talk about my life because I don't remember a lot of it. I was a blackout drinker, so when I drank, I just blacked out. There's years that I can't really tell you anything significant other than I had a wreck, I went to jail, I did this, all these things I did when I was drunk. So just being able to have this memory bank of things that I can look back on and be proud of and relish, even if it's just a year, man, that's awesome. I don't know, this program for me, it really has changed my life. I never understood it when my granddad was in AA. I would go to church with my grandmother every Sunday morning when I was a kid, and he never would go with us. But he was always a good man, and he was never worried about going to hell or anything, because I was talking about as a kid, I didn't understand that. And I look back on it and I see what he had in this program, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And I could see a lot of things that he did in his life that really helped to shape me as a person, but I see where it all came from now. I think absolutely the path that I was on, I don't know where I would be if I had to come in here. I know that I would probably be a single man, and I wouldn't have my wife and my kids. And the state of mind that I was in and where I was at that point, had that happened, it would have went downhill from there for sure. So I don't know, I'm just extremely grateful for everybody in here, and I'm glad that when I came in, I was so welcome and accepted from the get-go. And I'm not real good at talking like this. I know I've been all over the place, and I've never shared probably 90% of this with anybody other than one person. So it's been a little difficult for me. But That's all I really got, and I'd appreciate the opportunity. Thank y'all for listening to me.